de day, ha day, ha de day, ho, de diddle day, ha de day, ha day, ha de day, ho, de day, ha day, ha de day, ho, de diddle day, ha de day, ha day, ha de day, ho. Day o day de diddle day de day de day o diddle do day o de diddle day de day de day de do day o de diddle day de day de day o diddle do day o de diddle day de day de do. Once upon a time there was a man and a woman, a husband and wife, and they were poor. They were so poor, they lived in a small house, and outside of the house was a little field, a small field. They were so poor that every day they had to go into that field to work, scratching away at the earth, sowing whatever they could, growing whatever they could from that meager, thin soil, anything they could to feed their hungry bellies. They were poor. They had 2 children, twins, as a matter of fact. Identical twins, as a matter of fact. Identical in every way, except one was a boy and one was a girl. So, not quite identical, if you know what I mean. But anyway, now, the boy's name was Peik. And Peik, he loved to play tricks. Whenever there was work to be done, Peik was nowhere to be found. He'd be away across the fields, he'd be away across the valleys. He'd play tricks on everyone that he'd meet. He'd play tricks by day, he'd play tricks by night, leaving his mother and father and sister to do all of the work, scratching away at the earth. And even his mother and father, when they were dead and buried, worked themselves into an early grave. He still wouldn't help, he still wouldn't give up with his tricks, left his sister to do all of the work, and she said, Peik, what will you do when we have nothing left at all, huh? And he said, I'd probably play a trick. One day, Peik was sitting at the side of the road playing his little pipe when down the road came the king. Let me tell you about the king. The king was a big king. The king was a rich king. This king was so rich. Now, if wisdom were gold, well, then he would have been wiser than the wind. But it isn't. And he wasn't. In fact, he was pretty stupid. Imagine that. A man of great power and authority who's also quite stupid. Who would have thought of such a thing? Anyway, so there's the king riding down the road on his horse, his big fat king on his horse, and all the gold rings on his fingers, and the gold crown lolloping on his blonde hair, and he's riding down the road, and his poor horse struggling under the weight of him all, when suddenly he hears the sound of a pipe. And he looks, and he sees, and he says, Peik, is that you? And Peik says, yes, it's definitely me, because I recognize these legs. Very funny, said the king. Peik, listen, everyone tells me you like to play tricks. Is that so? Well, said Peik, I have been known to play a trick once or twice. Well, I tell you what, why don't you play a trick on me now, and I'll soon see if you're the trickster everyone says you are. And Peik said, I couldn't possibly do that. And the king said, why not? He says, because I haven't got my trickery sticks. Who's ever heard of a trickster playing tricks without trickery sticks? Are you stupid, your highness? Don't call me stupid. I'm the king. Well, go home and get your trickery sticks and play a trick on me. And I'll see if you're the trickster everyone says you are. I couldn't do that, said Peik. Why not, said the king. Because it's 2 hours walk to my house. Not going to walk 2 hours there and 2 hours back. That's like 7 hours walking. 7 hours? I tell you what, I'll save you the bother. I'll lend you my horse. So the king got down off his horse and he picked up Peik. And he put Peik on the back of the horse and he smacked the flank of the horse. The horse shot off with Peik on the back of the horse trying to hold on. And the king laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing as Peik rode off round the corner. Well, as soon as Peik was gone from view, he straightened up in the saddle and he rode to the market. And he sold the king's horse, and he sold the king's saddle, and he sold the king's bridle, and he took all of that money, and he went back home, and he put it in a tin, and he hid it up inside the chimney, and then he took out his pipe, and he played a tune, because he'd played a trick. Meanwhile, the king was walking up and down the road. Peik will be back in a moment. He'll play a trick on me, and all will be well. Well, he waited for 1 hour, he waited for 2, he waited for 2 hours, he waited for 3. And then suddenly, hang on a minute. Peik's played a trick. I'm going to kill him. When his big fat legs, he went waddling off down the road to Peik's house. But Peik heard that the king was coming. And so Peik took a pot and he filled it with porridge and he put it on top of the fire and he stoked the fire and he stirred the porridge until it was bubbling and steaming. And then he took a chopping block and he put it in the middle of the kitchen floor. And then he took the porridge and he put it on top of that chopping block and took his wooden spoon and carried on stirring the porridge. It wasn't long before there was a knock at the door. Tum, tum, tum. Peik, open up. It's the king. Peik opened the door. Ah, your highness. Don't you, your highness, me. Where's my horse? Where's my saddle? Where's my bridle? You played a trick on me. Nonsense. That's what. It doesn't matter. Just for a moment. Just come inside. I was going to have some porridge. Would you like some? He went back to the pot and he carried on stirring the porridge. And the king looked. Peik, he said, I'm no cook. I'm no specialist. But I can tell you what. If you want to cook that porridge, you're going to have to put it on the fire first to cook it. Oh, no, I'm not, said Peik, because this pot is a magical pot. A magical pot? Yes, yes. Anything I put in this pot, it cooks all on its own. Look, the porridge is steaming already. Well, the king looked into the pot, and sure enough, the porridge was bubbling and steaming. Well, I never, said the Peik. Said the king, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He thought of all of the things that he owned. And he owned many wonderful things. But he'd never seen a magical pot before. And when he saw that pot, his first thought was, I must have it. Peik, he said, I've never seen such a thing as that. Sell me your magical pot. No, said Peik. It's not for sale. It saves me a lot of bother. I'll give you £100. It's not for sale. £200. It's not for sale. £300. Done, says Peik. Because everything has its price. So the king takes out £300 in cash. And he gives the money to Peik, and Peik takes the money, and the king takes the pot, empties the porridge on the floor, and is off down the road as fast as his legs will carry him all the way back to the palace. And Peik takes the money, and he hides it in the tin, and he hides it up inside the chimney, and he takes out his pipe, and he plays a tune, because he's played a trick. The king wastes no time at all. He goes all the way back to the palace, up the stairs, in through the door, and everyone says, oh, there you are, Highness. Your Highness, it's late. We were wondering where you are. Well, never mind, but look, I've come now, and tonight I am going to cook for us all. You're going to cook, Your Highness? You've never cooked before. No, but I had no need to before, and now I do, because I have a magical pot. A magical pot? But that pot just looks like an ordinary pot. Well, of course it looks like an ordinary pot. What do you imagine, to have it rainbows and unicorns painted on it? Bring the ingredients. And so they brought ingredients. They brought meat and vegetables and spices, and they poured it all into the pot, and the king took his royal wooden spoon, and he started to stir it. And he stirred it and stirred it. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And he stirred it and stirred it, and when he tasted it, it was as cold as a stone. So he stirred it the other way, and he stirred it and stirred it and stirred it, and when he tasted it, bad, sad, nonsense, he said, until somebody said to him, Your Highness, just a little question, where did you get the pot from? Well, does that matter? I got it from a man down the road by the name of Peik. Peik! Your Highness, Peik's a trickster. He's played a trick on you. What? I'm going to kill him, said the king. And he got up on his horse, another one of his horses, and he rode all the way back to Peik's house. And he came to the door. Tum, tum, tum. Peik, open up, it's the king. Peik opened the door and said, Your Highness. Don't you, Your Highness, me. Don't tell me. The pot didn't boil, did it? Of course the pot didn't boil. You know that very well because you played a trick on me. No. Your Highness, the pot didn't boil because you forgot to take the magical chopping block that goes underneath it. A magical chop. Of course, who's ever heard of a magical pot boiling without a magical chopping block underneath it? Are you stupid, Your Highness? Don't call me stupid, I'm the king. Well, okay, so How much for the chopping block? You can have it the same price you paid for the pot. Well, if it makes the pot boil, it'll be worth it. So the king took out another £300 in cash. And he gave the money to Peik. Peik took the money. The king took the chopping block, up on his horse, rode back to the palace. Peik put the money in the tin, hid it up inside the chimney, took out his pipe, and he played a tune, because he'd played a trick. The king galloped back to the palace, up the stairs, bursting through the door. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Now the pot will boil, because I have the magical chopping block that goes underneath it. Well, they looked at him like he was mad. But he put the pot on top of the block, took his royal wooden spoon and started to stir it. And he stirred it and stirred it and stirred it. He tasted it, and it was as cold as a stone, so he stirred it the other way for 1 hour, for 2, for 3. And when he tasted it, it wasn't until he heard everyone laughing at him did the king suddenly realize, Peik's played a trick. And I still haven't seen those trickery sticks of his. How does he do it? Never mind. I'm going to kill him. And he got up onto his horse and he rode to Peik's house. Now Peik heard that the king was coming. And so Peik took the dog and he grabbed the dog and held it between his knees with the head that way and the tail the other. And then he took a funnel and he lifted up the dog's tail and he popped the funnel into its bumhole, and then he took a pot of honey and unscrewed the jar, and then poured the honey into the dog. And then he let the dog wander off around the room. And then he sat there waiting. Well, it wasn't long before tum, tum, tum came the knock at the door. Peik, open up, it's the king. Peik opened the door. Ah, your highness, don't you? Ah, your highness, me. You've played one too many tricks on me. The pot didn't boil. The magic chopping block wasn't a magic chopping block. And where's my horse and where's my saddle? Oh, just one moment, Peik. Your dog's about to shit on the floor. And he turned and looked, and the dog was crouching, its ears back, its tail. And Peik said, oh, good. The king said, good? Why'd you say good? Won't it make a mess? Ah, not with this dog. This dog is a magic dog. Anything you feed this dog out, the other end comes pure honey. Look. And he grabbed a bowl and he slipped it underneath the squatting dog. And he looked and looked, and sure enough, running out into the bowl came honey. There you go, you see? The finest honey in all of the land. Would you like to taste it? No, I don't want to taste it. Well, it's really good. Look. And the king said, a dog that craps honey? That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Well, he thought of all of the things that he owned, and he didn't own one of those. And the first thought he had was, I must buy that dog. Peik, he said, how much for your dog? No way. You're not buying my dog from me. It's very special. Where else will I get honey this good from? I'll give you £500. It's not for sale. £600. It's not for sale. £700. Done, says Peik, because everything has its price. So the king takes out £700. And he gives the money to Peik, and Peik takes the money, and the king takes the dog under his arm and off onto his horse and rides back to the palace as fast as he can. And the Peik takes the money and he hides it inside the tin and he pushes it up inside the chimney and he takes his pipe and he plays a tune. Day-o, day-um, diddle-day, day-um, dee-day-o, dum, dee-day-o, dum, dee-do. The king wastes no time. Back to the palace, up through the stairs, pushes open the door, and in he walks. Ah, there you are, your highness. Did you talk to Peik about that magic pot? Yes, I did, but never mind. I've got something far better now. I have a magic dog. A magic dog, your highness. What does it do? Fly? Oh, ha, ha, ha. Who's ever heard of a flying dog? Don't be ridiculous. This dog shits pure honey. Honey? Are you sure? Yes. You don't believe me. Well, it's not that I'll prove it to you. You take this dog and feed it the finest cuts of meat. And then you will blindfold me and I will sit at the throne. And you will bring me honey from the royal bees, and you will bring whatever comes out the back of this dog, and I bet you I won't be able to tell the difference. And so they took the dog and they fed it the finest cuts of meat. The dog thought it was its birthday. And the king waited, and then they put a blindfold on him, and there he sat at the throne, and they watched the dog as it walked this way and that way around the hall till its ears went back and it started to And they grabbed a bowl and they put it underneath the dog and they watched it as it squitted into the bowl. Are you sure about this, Your Highness? Yes, of course, I saw it with my own eyes. Bring it to me. And so 2 bowls were placed down on the table in front of the king. And he reached for one. Ha! So let's see. Ah, lovely. Oh, that's soft and runny. Oh, the delicious honey. I bet that came from the dog. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, where's the other bowl? Ah, here we go. Oh. A little bit warmer than it was before. It's okay. I saw it before. Oh. And only then did he realize Peik had played a trick. And he got up on his horse and he rode to Peik's house. But Peik heard that he was coming. And Peik, he went into the field where they kept the last pig that they owned. And he took out his knife and he killed the pig and he cut it open. And he took the bladder from the pig and he filled it with pig's blood, tied a knot in it, then went to his sister who was sitting in front of the fire and he whispered something into her ear and he tucked that bladder of pig's blood into her coat. And then Peik stretched out on the kitchen floor and fell fast asleep. It wasn't long before the king came to the door. Tum, 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 Peik! Peik, open up, it's the king. Peik's sister opened the door. Where's your brother, Peik? Shh. He's asleep. I don't care whether he's asleep. Wake him up. But he'll be very angry with me. I don't care how angry he'll be. Wake him up. So Peik's sister went over to Peik and woke him up. Peik, wake up. The king's here. Oh, Peik woke up and he was so angry with his sister for waking him. He started to scream and shout and scream at her. And before the king's eyes, he pulled out his long knife and he stabbed her in the coat. Blood spilled out everywhere and she fell down in a pool of blood on the floor. And the king said, "Are you mad? You've just killed your sister in front of my eyes. Oh, you're going to swing from the gallows for this?" "Oh, nonsense," said Peik. "Life and death mean nothing to me as long as I have a breath in my body." And he went over to the fireplace, and hanging above the fireplace was a goat's horn. And he took down the goat's horn. It was just an old goat's horn. He went to his sister. He put one end to his mouth, the other end to the mouth of his sister, and he blew once. She opened up her eyes. She stood up, and she was alive and well again. And the king said, "That's amazing." "That goat's horn. Where did you get that goat's horn from?" "Oh, well, we've had it in our family for generations. It gives me power over life and death." "I have many things," said the king, "but never before have I seen such a thing. I want power over life and death." "Peik, sell me your goat's horn." No, believe me, you don't want the goat's horn." "Yes, I do, and I'll pay you well. I'll give you £1,000. It's not for sale. £2,000. It's not for sale. £3,000. "Done," says Peik. Because everything has its price, as the king is soon to learn. So the king takes out £3,000 in cash. "Oh, just take it all." And he gave the money to Peik, and Peik took the money, and the king took the goat's horn up onto his horse, rode back to the palace. Peik put the money in the tin, hid it up in the chimney, took out his pipe, and he played a tune because he played a trick. The king wasted no time. Back to the palace he went, in through the door, up the stairs, to the room where his daughter, his youngest daughter, and his wife stood. And he started to scream and shout and scream at them until they were standing incredulous. Why there? And then he pulled out his knife and he stabbed them both in the heart, and they both fell down in pools of their own blood. And everyone said, "Your Highness, are you mad?" "Who, me?" "No, of course not. Life and death mean nothing to me as long as I have a breath in my body." He picked up the goat's horn and he put one end to his mouth and the other end to the mouth of his daughter, and he blew. And he blew. And he blew, and he blew for 1 whole day, for 2 whole days, and for 3. Couldn't put life back in their bodies. And it wasn't until he stood at the graveside, watching the coffins of his wife and youngest daughter lowered into the earth, did the king realize Peik had played a trick. And he got up onto his horse, and he rode to Peik's house. But Peik heard that the king was coming. And Peik took the tin with all of the money, and he went to his sister. He said, "Take this and go. There's nothing left for you here now. Take the money, go. Take the horse, take the cart, go south. Make a new life for yourself in the south. There's nothing left for you here. But before you go, change clothes with me." So Peik and his identical twin sister changed clothes. And she went off on the horse and the cart. She went south with everything that they had, and the money too. And Peik, wearing his sister's dress, waited by the fire. And he waited and waited until there was a loud knock at the door. Tum, tum, tum. "Peik, open up, it's the king." And Peik went over to the door and opened it. And the king said, "Where's your brother Peik?" And Peik said, "He's gone. He's gone north. He's taken everything. There's nothing left. I don't know what to do. I'm here all alone." The king said, "Please, stop crying. Stop crying. Stop crying. You're making me cry too. Stop it. Stop it. I can't believe your own brother would desert his sister. He's so cruel. Well, if we never see him again, it'll be too soon. Listen, you can't stay here all on your own with nothing. And as it happens, I recently lost a daughter, so I have a spare room in the palace. Why don't you come and live with me as my adopted daughter?" So Peik agreed, and he went to live with the king as his adopted daughter. And Peik spent his time with all the king's other daughters, and they enjoyed his company early, and they enjoyed his company late. Until, as it happens, coming through the kingdom, there came a young and handsome prince. Now the prince had come to the time in his life when he should marry. And he came to the king, and he said, "Young and handsome prince, I was wondering, could I marry one of your daughters?" "Of course," he said. "Go into the room there where all my daughters are and choose yourself a wife." So the prince went in, spent the afternoon getting to know them all. And when he came out, he was starstruck. And the king said, "Did you choose yourself a wife?" "Oh, I did. That adopted daughter of yours, the youngest. Oh, such a sharp tongue, such a gleam. She's the one I love. She's the one I wish to marry." Well, the king was overjoyed that such fortune should fall upon a poor girl. And so the very next day, there was a wedding. And what a wedding it was. I wish you could have been there. Everyone was there. In the great big hall, on one side of the hall were all the friends of the king, and on the other side were all the friends of the prince. And there was the prince standing at the front with all his buckles and buttons flashing, and there was the priest, and at the other end was the king with his crown, and beside the king was Peik in the most beautiful wedding dress you've ever seen, with a long white train, oh yes, white, with flowers in his hair. And he took the king's hand and walked down the aisle and said, "Oh, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. It's the happiest day of my life." And he stood in front of everyone, and he looked at the prince, and he looked at the king, and he turned and looked at everyone else, and then he reached down, and he hitched up his legs, and he waggled his tackle until it slapped his thighs, and then he turned and he ran. And the king recognized those legs and gave chase. And when he came round the corner, there he saw Peik sitting on the rock, playing his little pipe. And the king said, "Peik, I've had enough of this. You've played one too many tricks on me, and I'm going to put you in a barrel, and I'm going to roll that barrel to the top of a cliff, and you're going to sit there for 3 whole days and 3 whole nights thinking of all of the tricks you played on me, and at the beginning of the 4th day I'm going to kick you over the edge of the cliff, and I'm going to watch you drown in the sea below." And Peik said, "Well, if that's my fate, I might as well run to it as walk to it, so I'll go with you." So Peik was put in a barrel, and that barrel was rolled to the top of the cliff and set there on the cliffside. And Peik, there, sitting inside of that barrel, began to think of all of the tricks that he'd played on the king. And there he was, sitting there for 1 day, and for 2, And then he reached into his pocket and he took out his pipe and he started to play a tune. Just at that moment, riding along the cliff-top path, there came a rich man. Now, this rich man had spent his entire life making money. He was rich, but it had brought him no happiness. And he was weary of this world. He was riding down that cliff-top path in clothes of silk with bags of gold hanging from his belt and his fine horse, but he was weary of this world until he came to a barrel and he heard music coming from inside the barrel. And he knocked on the barrel. He said, "Here, you in there, why are you so happy?" And Peik said, "Well, I'm happy because tomorrow I'm bound for heavenly paradise." You're going to paradise in a barrel. I would give all of my worldly possessions to go to paradise in your place. "Well, that can be arranged," said Peik. So he kicked out the bottom of the barrel and he switched clothes with the rich man and he put the rich man into the barrel, sealed it closed, took the horse, took the gold, took the clothes, and Peik rode free. And the king, very next morning, came to the top of the cliff. He said, "I hope I never ever see you again." And he kicked the barrel over the edge and he watched it tumble and tumble and fall and shatter on the rocks and sink beneath the waves. Said the king. And that was the end of Peik. And he got up on his horse and he set off back along the road. So there's the king with his great big crown lolloping on his blonde head. And there are all his gold rings on his orange skin. And there's his great big necklaces and his poor horse struggling under the weight of the horse until he came round the corner. And what did he hear but "Day-ho, day-um, dee-diddle-day, day-um, day-day-o, dum, dee-day-o, dum, dee-do." And then he saw Peik sitting on the rock playing his pipe. He said, "Peik, is that you?" And Peik said, "Yes, it is. I recognize the legs. But I just kicked you in a barrel off the edge of the cliff. How did you? And where did you get all of that gold from and that fine horse and those fine clothes?" "Ah," said Peik. "Now there's a story. You see, I fell into the water and I sank and I sank and I sank and I thought I was going to drown." "Yes," said the king, "so did I." "Yes, but I didn't, you see, because suddenly I found I could breathe because, Your Highness, I was in a land beneath the sea. And the most amazing land it was. And I was walking down this beautiful land. The sky above was the bottom of the ocean. And I was walking through this, and I saw many wonderful things. But then suddenly I came on a tree, and growing on the branches of that tree were bags of gold. And when I saw that tree with gold growing on it, I thought I'd take that gold, and I'd come back, and I'd tell you as fast as I could." And the king said, "Really? A land beneath the sea where money grows on trees? Well, I must go there. How will I get there?" "That's easy," said Peik. "I'll put you in a barrel and kick you over the edge of the cliff." And the king said, "You must do it immediately." And so the king was squeezed into a barrel, and Peik rolled it to the top of the cliff. He said, "I hope you find what you're looking for," and pushed the barrel over the edge, watched it fall and tumble and shatter on the rocks beneath. And that was the end of the king. And Peik, he got up on his horse, and he rode back to the palace. And there he married the king's eldest daughter. And because now he was married to the daughter of a king, he too became a king himself. And nobody called him Peik. They called him Your Highness. And he even had his sister brought up from the south. And she lived there in the palace too. And because she was now the sister of a king, she never had to do another day's work as long as she lived. And as for Peik, well, the story says that he never played another trick again. Personally, I don't believe a word of it. Once a trickster, always a trickster. Day-ho, day-um, dee-diddle-day, day-um, dee-day-o-dum, dee-day-o-dum, dee-do. Day-ho, day-um, dee-diddle-day, day-um, dee-day-o-dum, dee-day-o-dum, dee-do. Thank you very much.